Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Progress America Unfiltered. This is Rhett Martino here with Michael Phelan and Tyler Brockington to cover what is going on in Tennessee. So we've seen Tennessee really hit the news recently for some not so good reasons, as we did see a mass shooting there happen just recently, and now we are seeing the conversation about gun violence prevention play out in the state legislatures over there. And we are seeing the Republicans funded by the NRA, of course, fight back against common sense gun violence prevention legislation. And so in the conversation of these horrific mass shootings that we see time and time again within these United States, we always have to fall back to this idea that, you know what, a lot of politicians really don't care because their campaigns are funded, are bought, are paid for by the National Rifle Association. And you know what? That's terrifying. And to cover a little bit about what's going on in the state legislatures over there in Tennessee, we have Michael Phelan. Phelan, what is up?
Well, it seems like the wonderful state of Tennessee, the volunteer state, is volunteering for a race to theocratic fascism with Ron DeSantis's Florida, and they might have just moved into the lead. So far this year, it's April, but they passed the strictest anti-drag bill that targets trans communities, making it illegal to, in a very broadly written written way, they've made it illegal to present as a non-biological gender, calling into question whether you could have a performance of Shakespeare's The Twelfth Night or screen Some Like It Hot. This is insane ahistorical stuff, just based on hate and targeting trans communities. They passed the strictest abortion ban in the country, which is currently killing women. And they just passed a bill letting clerks refuse marriage licenses to LGBTQ couples, even though the Supreme Court, even this right-wing Supreme Court, has affirmed the right to marriage. And so it's not that they are handling important business and too busy to deal with the gun violence epidemic. They just don't want to. And so, Tyler, tell us about what's been happening this week.
Yeah, so Monday marked a week after a deadly shooting in Nashville that I'm sure we've all heard of at this point. It was devastating. We lost 3 adults and 3 children in this, one of the latest mass shootings in this nation, and a student-led protest across the state ended up at this Tennessee state capitol with students walking out from Vanderbilt and other area schools. I think I read that there were somewhere around 1,000 students in total across the state protesting, which is just really amazing and also kind of heartbreaking to see. The students led chants like ban assault weapons and things like that. And they assembled in the hallways of the Capitol, typical First Amendment protest stuff that our Constitution protects. And so 3 Democrats in the Tennessee State House, Gloria Johnson, Justin Pearson, and Justin Jones, stood up and chanted with the protesters and the students to show that even though the Republican majority was ignoring them, they had support in the House from elected representatives. And shockingly, the Republicans in the House did not take this well. The Speaker of the House, a Republican named Cameron Sexton, warned them to not acknowledge the protesters, which is pretty demeaning, if you ask me, considering the protesters and the representatives were exercising their right to peacefully assemble and make their voices heard on the really gruesome tragedy that was going on, and Republicans continued inaction. So, Michael, let me know what happened after that.
Well, so in retaliation for supporting the students who are just out there trying not to get shot at school, the Tennessee House is going to vote on Friday to expel these 3. The Speaker of the House told reporters what they did, and this is a quote, "What they did was equivalent or maybe worse than doing an insurrection in the state capitol." So he's comparing this to January 6th, and nobody shat on anything, nobody killed any, no one died. There was no violence, there was no poop. It was just students peacefully assembling, demanding that their representatives actually represent them. And as a result, these Democratic communities are going to have their representation stripped from them. Denies the communities with Democratic representatives adequate representation in the country. And it takes further. It's an extension of the agenda of gerrymandering and voter suppression that has united the Republican Party against democracy. So while we have CNN, MSNBC, Fox News all focused on Donald Trump's airplane and op-ed after op-ed in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times about, can we still be a democracy if the president can't do crimes? We actually have a state that's working to end democracy. Tyler, what you got?
I actually want to tag on there too, because we're talking about, they're comparing this to like, in the insurrection, blah, blah, blah. This is worse than the insurrection, just, expressing the right to not want to die by gun violence in this country. But the only violence or semblance of violence that we saw was from Republican representatives in the House. A Republican representative, Justin Lafferty, shoved another representative, one of the ones who joined the students in protest, Representative Justin Jones. Yep, and took his phone and threw him to the ground and shoved him. And that's actually caught on tape. And I'll see if we can throw in some footage or link to it below. But that was the only semblance of violence we had was from Republicans being upset at the Democrats and the students using their voices to protest, which I think is so telling that then they would go on and say, well, this is worse than the insurrection. But Rhett, what do you think?
Yeah, I really wanted to go back to that idea of the January 6th insurrection in comparison to this. I think that is so just unbelievable that they are willing to compare students that are protesting to basically not die at the hands of an AR-15 to these Trumpies that stormed the United States Capitol. And it's just so frightening that this is the same kind of rhetoric that it's just oh yeah, the January 6th insurrection, that was whatever, good for democracy or whatever they have in their head, in comparison to students that are just trying to make their voices heard, say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't have to die at the hands of an assault rifle. It's just so frightening. And it's that same kind of lack of logic that we see as just kind of a answer that they put forward to why they're still receiving that funding from the NRA, why they're refusing to act on banning assault rifles, why they are choosing to let gun violence just run rampant in our communities. It's really heartbreaking for sure.
So just on the constitutional question, right? They want to say, oh, well, we're standing up and we're defending the Second Amendment. But there's that other amendment right before it about peaceful assembly and freedom of speech and freedom of the press that Republicans don't seem to give a shit about. And their idea of the Second Amendment, they didn't read the beginning of it. It's a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of a people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That doesn't say anything about the right to have an AR-15, a weapon of war, in a non-militia setting. And we have a very clear example where there was actual tyranny and an actual insurrection, and all these gun nuts were on the side of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yet they're still serving in elected positions, in elected office, which is frightening. I'm just thinking about what else is going on in Tennessee. So Phelan, as you mentioned, the right for LGBT people to marry, to exist in public, this is all things that are under attack over in Tennessee. And while I was getting ready for the show, I was thinking wow, this definitely would target how I present myself publicly too. This jacket, I got it in the women's section of a thrift store a few months ago. For sure. So they would hate this. They would hate this. But honestly, where's the flavor in what they're wearing is what I want to know. I just wanted to put that in there as just a fun little dig. But there is no flavor in the fits that we're seeing. But I think that we can hold off on our fashion police segment maybe for another day. Let's get back to the gun violence discussion.
We can.
Because,
but I will say,
this
Rhett,
is unbelievable.
I will say, it's an interesting point, and I think we're seeing the way that the way that Tennessee Republican lawmakers are really using everything in their arsenal to get power and stay in power. So even though I think, what's happening with the gun violence is extremely serious and extremely important to be paying attention to, and expelling members and taking their ID before they're even expelled and all of this stuff, that's extremely important, but we have to pay attention to the full picture. And it is the way that they're policing how people dress and policing people's private lives and marriages and the abortion ban. All of these things are interconnected. And so now when we think about it, So this is what happens when people are peacefully protesting and using their First Amendment right to protect themselves and advocate for themselves. What's going to happen when people continue to do this for against the anti-drag legislation, against the abortion ban? Now they're basically saying, and I think setting up, precedent for other right-wing legislatures to say, hey, if you don't like what they have to say, just expel them. And that's not okay. And we're going to see it trickle down. Today it's gun legislation, but they will do it for anything that disagrees with them if they're able to get away with this. And so it's really, really frightening to me. And I think we should really be taking it seriously because they're stripping people of their elected representatives who were voted to do these things and stand up for them and say no, despite the fact that it's a Republican supermajority.
That's exactly right, Tyler. Yeah, I mean, it's just like this fear of debate that I think is rampant in like Republican communities for sure. And yeah, I think with that, if you all feel like we're good to wrap up, I think that we covered this issue really well. Tennessee, what is going on? We want to make sure that there is gun safety legislation that exists in all areas of this country. And you know what, Tennessee, Republican representatives over there, you got to do better. You got to just, stop with the adjacent fascism, really work towards meeting the needs of the people of Tennessee, because honestly, what is going on? Tyler and Michael, thanks so much for being on today. Everybody at home for watching. Thank you for turning off the Trump news as it is, the Trump echo chambers that we're seeing time and time again, and tuning into this issue. It is just so important that we are paying attention to Tennessee before the rest of the Republican Party takes part in what is going on over there. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for tuning into Progress America Unfiltered. Have a great day. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and bye-bye.